Hello and welcome to another Teacher's Corner. I'm Teacher Kirby. Today I'm going to be going over the intelligence specialization tree. We actually get asked a lot of questions about what specialization should I be running, why should I be running that specialization, what do specializations do, things like that. So specializations get unlocked at level 50, for those of you that don't know. And there are two kinds. There's primary specializations and secondary specializations. Okay, primary specializations have 4 tiers, 4 levels, and you fill them up by earning specialization points, which you start earning as you continue to move up through the ranks once you reach level 50. Every time you get a specialization point, which you can see here, I have one sitting in the wings that I haven't spent yet, you spend it. You come to the tree and you spend it. Okay, you choose a skill and it unlocks that skill for your character. As I said, there are 2 types of specializations. There's primary and there is secondary. The main difference between them, primary uses all 4 tiers. Secondary uses only the first 2 tiers. So if I were to put something as a secondary specialization, even if I have unlocked or spent points in all 4 tiers of the tree, it would only give me the abilities from the first 2. Okay, so it would cut me off after the first 2 as a secondary specialization, and that's important to note because that is why a lot of DPS players will run certain trees like Intel, for example, which is the one we're going over today, as primary because they want certain abilities from tier 3 or tier 4. Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. I'm going to only go over the space side. Okay, so tier 1 is hide weakness. This is a nice survival skill. What it does is it gives you a damage resistance anytime that your shields are taken down. So this means that a facing is taken down. So this means if you're fighting the Borg, for example, in ISA, and they keep shooting at your front shield, and your front shield goes down to 0, you will then get a damage resistance buff up to plus 50 along that shield facing, so along that front shield arc. Okay? So this is nice for survival. This is also passive, meaning that once you unlock it, you don't have to do anything else. If it is, as long as it is slotted either primary or secondary, you will get the benefit from this. Okay? Automated reinforcement. This is shield regeneration. So it gives you a bonus to shield regeneration. Again, the condition is that your shield has to be a shield facing, can't speak today, has to be taken offline in order for it to trigger. Okay, so in other words, Borg fight you, they take your shield facing down to 0, and boom, you get some extra regeneration so that it comes back and recovers a little faster and you get your shields back sooner. Alright, so that's tier 1. Tier 2 is, in reality, tier 2 is something you're going to get through, as at least for intelligence, you're going to get through unless you're playing PvP. You're really not going to find them all too valuable. But they do have adaptive targeting, so this increases your accuracy every time that you miss, stacks up to 4 times. Okay, but it only lasts for 10 seconds. Accuracy, really, a lot of people have this misconception. When you're playing against NPCs, accuracy is really not an issue. Okay, it really isn't. It comes into play more in PvP, and that's where you would see a benefit for this, for having this skill. Okay, perception bending. This increases your stealth, meaning you are harder to detect while you are cloaked, and increases your perception, meaning you can see other people's cloaks or NPCs' cloaks a little better, a little sooner, and meaning you can see your enemies a little farther out from where you are. Again, unless you're doing PvP, this really isn't something that you're going to need in the PvE genre or the PvE world here. Redundant sensors. So this has again 2 levels, and what this does is it has a chance, I want to be clear, it's a chance, not a guarantee, to remove, placate, or confuse. So an example of this would be scramble sensors or jam targeting sensors, where it prevents you either from where it either prevents you from firing or makes you fire or target on your allies rather than your enemies. Okay, so it has a chance of removing those effects. Again, unless you're playing a lot of PvP, you're really not going to see too much of a difference from what you usually do with this. You're probably not going to notice it. Okay, tier 3. This is where we get into the nitty gritty. Okay, this is why a lot of DPS players, most DPS players, will run intelligence as their primary specialization tree because of space flanking. There's 2 levels. Space flanking 1, space flanking 2. This works very similar to ground flanking. Every ship has a rear arc. When you fire on every ship, every enemy, NPC included, including things like transformers and gates and generators and ISA, they all have flanks or rear arcs. Okay, and when you hit an enemy in their rear arc, you get a damage boost. If you have space flanking 2, it's 10% all damage when hitting the enemy's rear arc. Now this is actually pretty good, and can increase your DPS by quite a bit. Okay, so this is an important one to have. If we move on, going from left to right, we have Destabilized and Mirrors. This one actually is currently seems to be bugged. I'm investigating with another player this, and we're working on looking to see if we can get this fixed. It is supposed to have a 10% chance to drain shields, okay, with your projectile weapons for 10 seconds. Okay. As I said, right now it seems to not be working at all. So we are following up on that and looking for Bug Hunter to submit that. Have some video for that. Alright. Moving on, Shoddy Engineering. Shoddy Engineering, this increases your crit severity, but it only increases your crit severity while you're firing on the rear arc. So this is actually going to help quite a bit with your flanking. Okay, so they tie into each other, and that means that when you do crit while you're flanking, you're going to crit even harder. So not only do you now have a 10% damage boost innately, now you also have 15% added to your crit severity when you fire in that rear arc. So this becomes even, this really helps the DPS potential to grow. Add in the next skill, Unprotected Systems. This increases your crit chance by 5% when hitting your enemy's rear arc. So let's say this toon, for example, is a Romulan. He's got pretty high crit chance, about 30%. So whenever I'm shooting in the rear arc, his crit chance is now boosted up to about 35%. Okay, so this is a big deal. It does help, and his crit severity is increased by another 15. So all of these 3 here, the space flanking, Shoddy Engineering, and Unprotected Systems, combine in kind of like a perfect storm of interrelated skills here to give quite a good increase on DPS, which is why this tree is so popular. Okay, if I move down to tier 4, there's some even more popular items here. Opportunistic. Opportunistic decreases the cooldown for your captain abilities. So what that means is things like Tactical Fleet, Attack Pattern Alpha, Tactical Initiative. For example, if you're an engineering captain, Miracle Worker, EPS Transfer Rate, Nadion Inversion. If you're a science officer, Photonic Fleet, sensor scan or sensor analysis, no, sensor scan, sorry, and science fleet, things like that, are all reduced in their cooldown. So they will cool off a little bit faster. These are things that traditionally have a long cooldown time. You're looking at about 2 minutes normally. So 5% of 2 minutes is a pretty good chunk of time that's coming off of that. Okay, so this is actually a pretty good skill. That means you can hit these things that much faster. Alright, and moving on, and again I'm only going to cover the space side of this, which in this case is on the left. So then we have the final piece of the puzzle, the intelligence fleet. Intelligence fleet has three things. So it's a 10% shield penetration and armor penetration for 30 seconds. So this means you're going to hit even harder than you normally do. You're going to be able to punch through shields easier. You're going to hit even harder when you hit the armor. Okay? Now it does last for 30 seconds. Now here's the thing. This is a team-wide buff, meaning it doesn't only affect you, it affects all of your teammates as well. Okay? So it is possible, and a lot of DPS and the DPS channels do this a lot when they, when you sign up for a run, it is possible to have everybody in the run have this and call certain locations in the run when they're going to activate this skill. So it is then possible to keep this up for the entire match so that everybody benefits from this. Okay? And again, like with the other skills that have 2 tiers, the second tier or second level of this, the increased level, has a larger benefit. So Intel Fleet also has, you'll notice, an improvement to Starship Stealth, which really, if you have a cloak at all, plus 20 Starship Stealth, you're really not going to see that difference. You're not going to notice that very much in PvE. Okay, it might be useful somewhat in PvP, but still that's a pretty small increase. And plus 20 to Perception. Again, this is being able to detect cloaked ships. Okay, so, but again, plus 20, it's a small bonus. Really what the reason that a lot of people use this is for the shield and armor penetration. Okay, so there you have it. We've unlocked the secrets of the space side of the intelligence specialization. I'm going to follow this up with continue the series, and next week will be the pilot specialization. We'll go over pilot and explain whether that should be primary or secondary. Again, as I've said, most DPS players choose Intel as their primary, except for a few special niche builds. Okay? Well, this has been Teacher's Corner. I hope you've learned something, and I will see you next week.